Immigration in our nation. The history of U.S. immigration began with gateways for immigrants such as Ellis Island. Ellis Island, in Upper New York Bay, was the United States' busiest immigration inspection station for over 60 years. It has been estimated that close to 40% of all current U.S. citizens can trace at least one of their ancestors to Ellis Island. Passengers disembarked from their ships at the piers in New York Harbor to enter the U.S., and everyone was welcome. Back then, only 2% of immigrants were refused entry to the U.S. and deported, and that was only for legal or health issues.
My grandmother came from Russia, a satchel on her knee. My grandfather had his father's cap he brought from Italy. They'd heard about a country where life might let them win. They paid the fare to America, and there they melted in. A lovely lady Liberty, with her book of recipes, and the finest one she's got is the Great American Melting Pot. The Great American Melting Pot.
However, nowadays, the U.S. isn't as welcoming or accommodative to immigrants as it was back then. Acquiring a U.S. citizenship now isn't as easy as it was then.
In order to be eligible for citizenship, you must meet 6 basic requirements. 1. Be a lawful permanent resident, also known as a green card holder. 2. Be at least 18 years old. 3. Have had a green card for at least 5 years, or if you're married to a U.S. citizen, for 3 years. 4. Have lived in the same state for at least 3 months before applying. 5. Be a person of good moral character. And 6. Be able to understand and speak basic English.
How long did or will it take for you to get your citizenship?
Well, now that I have a green card, so 4 years and 9 months is when you're eligible to apply for naturalization. And let's say about another 2, 3, 4, 5 months, depending on the information you provide and whatever USCIS processes take from there to validate all that. I would say by 5 years, typically, you should be having your citizenship.
And then, so after we got the green card, it's taken us 6 years to get the citizenship.
My name is Kavita Akula. I am an immigration attorney practicing in Dallas Metroplex for the last 11 years now. Our firm predominantly deals with immigration and specifically employment-based immigration.
Legal immigration. American employers can hire a limited number of foreign workers with advanced education or work experience. These high-skilled immigrants make significant contributions to the economy. However, there is disagreement over whether these immigrants are replacing American workers at lower wages. Should more high-skilled people be allowed to immigrate? That's the question.
The overwhelming majority of economists agree that immigration is a good thing for national economies. Many studies indicate that increased immigration is associated with overall increases in GDP and productivity. Opponents of immigration, however, point to some of the costs that can come along with immigration. They point to data indicating that immigrants with low skills are likely to remain poor, and that some of those economic disadvantages can be passed to their children. That recent immigrants use a lot of social services, that immigration might result in short-term drops in wages and contribute to inequality by shifting money from labor to capital. And the data, it bears some of this out. The thing is, though, these arguments don't look at the net effects of immigration. Let's go to the thought bubble. Harvard economist George Borjas wrote about a family of economic models he called the immigration surplus. Population growth via immigration increases the demand for goods, which can, in the long run, lead to more hiring and higher wages. This can come at the cost of people who are already working, as inexpensive immigrant labor can drive down wages. But most economists point to this as a short-term effect, and that the overall growth in the economy, driven by population growth, will eventually push wages up. So the benefits of immigration tend to not only outweigh, but to exceed the costs. Studies indicate this holds true, even in cases of extreme immigration events. Labor markets quickly...
Some people might have to wait 20, 25 years to get their permanent residency under the employment-based categories, and that was the best case scenarios. But there is another train of thought out there where the worst case scenario of somebody who might get a permanent residency or a green card, what we say, could be a potential 60 to 70 years,
Immigration processes from India or China take the longest time.
Today, Asians, which includes and is driven by Chinese and Indians, are the largest immigrant group coming to America.
What was your immigration process like?
It was a very interesting and a long-drawn process. So let me set the perspective. We came to United States in 2003, and I started my permanent residency application in November 2007, and it has been a good 15 years now since we came to United States, and we have been fortunate. We received our green cards last week.
Congratulations.
So it's about a good 12 to 15 years of wait.
12 to 15 years waiting
Yeah.
for your green card itself?
That's right.
So basically, the immigration process that I went through was extremely long and exhausting. The first time, I've been here for the past 12 years. I've been living in the US. And the first 7 years, we've been waiting. Initially, my husband was on a work visa. So basically, he was sponsored by his employer. And when they do that, then it takes a few years for you to even get your green card. So it took us like 7 years to just get the green card.
Right now, there is a complete backlog when we are talking about employment-based immigration, especially in the immigrant visa realm, because specifically for two countries, which is India and mainland China. They say this is because of the number of people who are coming out of these countries and who are trying to apply for the permanent residencies. It's a very high number compared to the number of visas allotted to those countries for every year.
An immigrant's country of origin has a great effect on how long and/or how difficult their process is to immigrate here. Long-drawn processes can stand to discourage immigrants from countries with extremely competitive permanent residency applications to come to the United States.
So the fact that all the countries have fixed quota and there's a huge amount of demand from people from India and China, so the lines for Indians and similar countries where there's a huge demand tends to get backed up. And this is a reflection of why it took so many years for me to get my green card as compared to somebody, let's say, from Nepal or Bangladesh, where the lines are much smaller. Because I knew people who worked with me, they were from South American countries, which actually had a much shorter lines. So they got it in a reasonable amount of time.
Who to let into this country and who not to let into this country is about as old as the country itself. It's an issue that America has debated since the early 19th century, and we've admitted people from nearly every single country since, but it hasn't really been an even admission process. So this line represents 200,000 legal immigrants to the U.S., and we're going to stack them up to see when they came to the U.S. and where they came from. So early on, most were European, largely Irish, German, and British, and there were also Chinese and Canadian immigrants. But in 1882, the U.S. passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which banned Chinese immigration for 10 years. That was extended and then made permanent, and it wasn't repealed for 61 years. The economic depression of the 1890s decreased European immigration and nearly stopped Canadian immigration entirely. But after the Depression, the demographics of immigrants changed, and there was a rise in Russian, Italian, Spanish, and Japanese immigrants. In 1917, the U.S. banned immigration from Asian countries entirely, except for the Philippines and Japan. In 1921, the U.S. capped immigration based on nationality. This severely limited the ability to immigrate to the U.S. for people not from the Western Hemisphere or a country with older roots in the U.S. Then the Great Depression happened. All immigration plummeted. Then World War II happened. The U.S. refused to increase immigration caps for 20,000 Jewish children fleeing Nazi rule. It also stopped naturalization proceedings for Italians, Germans, and Japanese. In 1952, the U.S. stopped excluding immigrants based on race, but more stringent quotas meant most slots were still for Western Europeans. In 1965, the quota system was entirely repealed. It allowed for a far more diverse group of immigrants, particularly from Central America and South America, but also Asia. In the 1970s and 80s, Asian immigrants arrived in huge numbers, largely from the Philippines, South Korea, India, and Hong Kong. The US also evacuated 130,000 people from Vietnam after the war. In the 1990s, the US increased immigration caps to 700,000 annually. The country began to invest in border security to discourage unauthorized migration, but in exchange allowed nearly 1.7 million Mexican immigrants in the 1990s. Immigration to the US is now more diverse than ever.
Regardless of their country of origin, the influx of immigrants into the country has changed the face of the U.S. and the average life of the U.S. citizen.
In the year 2000 census, the number of Mexican-born immigrants surpassed 9 million. It's also notable that India was the top country of origin in 3 states. And the 2010 census reveals exactly why America is quickly becoming so diverse. Only 5 states, all of them bordering Canada, received the most immigrants from a majority white country.
Some immigrants experience more difficulties than others. How long did it take to get your permanent residency?
It took 2 years. I do have it. It took 2 years because it's probably easier for somebody coming from Western Europe than from some other areas, and you don't get the pushback that I'm sure some other people experience.
I started my permanent residency application in November 2007, and it has been a good 15 years now since we came to the United States, and we have been fortunate. We received our green cards last week.
What is your highest level of education?
The highest level of education I have is a bachelor's degree in public health education.
Basically high school graduate. It's not quite the same system, high school graduate. I did a couple of night classes at community college after high school, but no high school college degree, sorry.
So I wasn't able to work initially, which, I had a bachelor's degree, I had a master's degree, and I wanted to work, but I couldn't. So initially I had to just keep studying. And so I just took some classes and some certifications and stuff like that, just to optimize my time until I actually get the work permit.
Though immigrants have been such an integral part of this country's creation and function since the colonial era, we continue to see anti-immigrant sentiments in daily life today. Immigrants who enter this country don't come here to steal jobs or make lives difficult for American citizens. They're simply here to achieve a better standard of living, as well as better lives for their children. People who hold these sort of beliefs often make claims that immigrants aren't good for the U.S. and stand to reduce quality of life for citizens that are already here. But these people often speak without understanding the issue of immigration in and of itself.
There's sometimes, because I dress differently, and I'm from a Muslim faith, I get some kind of stink stares sometimes.
No matter what country they come from, immigrants are extremely important and have benefited the U.S. in many aspects of life.
Over 41 million legal and undocumented immigrants live in the country today. That's 13% of the population. How the U.S. deals with the flow of immigrants directly affects the country's security and economy. So why is immigration reform so controversial?
Unless the Congress does something and raise the limits on the number of visas allocated per country.
Comprehensive immigration reform that addresses all of these questions has eluded Washington for years. Presidential candidates will debate their plans, but only Congress can rewrite the nation's immigration laws. So what can the president do? Use executive powers to veto bills and set policy on how strictly the law is enforced. Whether working with Congress or acting independently, the next president has the power to significantly shape immigration policy.